If you could only watch one fantasy football video this summer, it should be this one. In today's video, I'm going to be detailing exactly how you are going to be putting your league mates in a figure four and dominating your 2024 fantasy football drafts. We will start by discussing how your strategy will change based upon league size, roster settings, and scoring settings. Then we'll be discussing a question that is as old as time. Do bye weeks matter in fantasy football? After that, we'll be going in depth through my quarterback, tight end, running back, and wide receiver rankings, closing things out with a mock draft, showing you guys how I would look to actually draft in my home leagues. But before we can get on into today's video, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. While you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. And if you'd like to check out my rankings and tiers for PPR and half PPR, they're available on my Patreon, link in the video description, for $7.50. So without further ado, let's get into the best strategy in 2024 fantasy football drafts. We begin with the league sizes. Now, the size of your fantasy football league is very important to know because the size of your league can change how you are drafting your draft strategy as a whole in a huge way. If you are in a smaller 8 or 10 team league, the onesie positions, aka the quarterback and tight end position, are way more important when you compare them to a 12 team or even a bigger sized league. The reason behind this is in an 8 or 10 team league, basically every single team in your league is going to be loaded to the gills. Everyone's going to have these amazing running back, wide receiver cores, the amazing flex option, but the way you get that edge up on your opponents is by having either an elite tight end or quarterback, and potentially both an elite quarterback and an elite tight end. Now, it's important to understand that this is not a hard or fast rule, but I do think having an elite quarterback or tight end becomes a lot more important in smaller leagues. Now, if you are in a 12-team league, I just draft very normally. I'm taking the best players available. Now, the elite quarterback and tight end are both very valuable in 12-team leagues as well, but I am much less likely to draft both an elite quarterback and an elite tight end, whereas in 8 or 10-team league, I do think that is a lot more beneficial. If you are in a bigger league, meaning 14 teams or bigger, due to supply and demand at the running back position, they are going to be a lot harder to come by, and they're going to come off the board at a faster rate, at least based upon the mock drafts that I have done. Since this is the case, I really do think you should be looking to potentially even take 2 running backs with your first 2 picks. Obviously, you don't have to do that, but I am searching for running backs early on in 14-team leagues. Now we'll move into the roster settings discussion. If you are in a normal 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receiver, a tight end, and 1 flex league, in this format, which I believe a majority of you guys are going to play in, no position is significantly more important than another, and I would be focusing on going with the best player available at every selection. Now, things change if you're in a 3 wide receiver league or a 2 flex league, where the wide receiver position becomes much more important, as weekly you can be starting 4 wide receivers or more, potentially, if you are in a league with multiple flex spots or maybe 4 wide receiver starts. You know, some people like to get a little bit funky. This leads to me being more likely to fade the elite quarterback or tight end, as well as running backs early on, so that I can have an elite wide receiver core. Now, if you are in a super flex league, this is not the video for you. I actually made a whole super flex video talking about my draft strategy in super flex leagues and doing 2 mock drafts in that video. So if you have not seen that, make sure you go ahead and check that out after today's video. The final talking point before we get on into breaking down bye weeks and then going into the quarterback, tight end, running back, and wide receiver strategies would be involving the scoring settings. It is crucial for you to understand your league's scoring settings. Is it full PPR? Is it half PPR? Or is it standard? Because that is going to drastically alter the type of player that you may want to be drafting. Same thing goes with a 6-point per passing touchdown versus a 4-point per passing touchdown. In a 6-point per passing touchdown league, that is going to help level the playing field between the quarterbacks with insane rushing upside versus those who are quote-unquote pocket passers. 4-point passing touchdown leagues, those extra 2 points for rushing touchdowns really does point you towards the quarterbacks that can run the football. So in terms of scoring settings, make sure before your draft, is this a full PPR draft, half PPR, standard? Is it 6-point per passing touchdown, 4-point per passing touchdown? Is there insane bonuses for 300 plus passing yards? Are there bonuses for getting a certain amount of receiving yards? All of those things are very important when it comes to making your selection on draft day. Now, the age-old question of do bye weeks matter is relatively important, and I think this is a discussion that is heavily misconstrued. The answer is very simple. When talking about either a running back or a wide receiver, I don't look at the bye weeks at all. Obviously, on paper, it might look incredibly weird if you draft 5 running backs and every single one of those running backs are on bye the exact same week. But by the time you actually reach a lot of the players' bye weeks deep into the season, your team is going to look drastically different. Some of the players are going to be sleeping in the fishes like Luca Brasi, right? Some of your players are going to be not on your team because you cut them, right? They're straight up ass like Savannah Bond. Some of them are going to be hurt, obviously. You're going to be changing players off from the waiver wire, and you're going to potentially be making a lot of trades. Some of you guys might be fiends for trading, right? Scratching your neck, you're addicted to it like some crack, and you really want to make those trades. So by the time you actually get to bye weeks, your team's players are going to be injured. Maybe no one's injured, but you've traded away some players. You have used the waiver wire. The team is going to look drastically different in most scenarios by the time you actually have your bye weeks for the running backs and wide receivers. It does matter, though, at the quarterback and tight end position, because if you are going to draft 2 quarterbacks or 2 tight ends, and that is something we are going to talk about in the quarterback and tight end strategies, you don't want to draft 2 on the same bye week because, hey, when it gets to be your quarterback's bye week and you need another quarterback, now you're potentially nervous to draft the other or cut the other quarterback that you have. Now you got to pick up another quarterback, and now you might be holding 3 quarterbacks. You're playing quarterback fucking roulette every single week. So make sure that if you're going to draft 2 quarterbacks, you're going to draft 2 tight ends, that you check the bye weeks, because once it gets to bye week 12 and both their quarterbacks are on the same bye week, you're going to be sitting there feeling incredibly stupid. Now we're going to move on to the quarterback strategy. At the quarterback position right next to me, as you can see, we have my rankings. Quarterback, to me, feels incredibly deep this season. I would feel confident in every quarterback in the first 3 tiers, the S tier, the A tier, and the B tier. Now, if you're drafting a quarterback in the Jalen Hurts through Jordan Love range, which is the top 3 tiers, you should not be drafting a quarterback number 2. All that drafting a quarterback 2 is going to do is burn a bench spot, burn a hole in your pocket, because you're realistically never really going to start the other quarterback that you take later over the quarterback 1, assuming your quarterback 1 is healthy. That roster spot should be used on the lottery ticket running back or wide receiver that could be in your lineup weekly. Now, when it comes to the 4th tier, which would be the C tier, I am relatively confident in those quarterbacks. But if you wanted to draft a quarterback 2, if you have Stafford, Rodgers, or Baker touchdown maker as your quarterback number 1, I definitely wouldn't shit all over you for doing so. It is also important to note that if you are in a 14-team league or a deeper league than that, where a lot of people are rostering 2 quarterbacks, Normally you kind of try to stay away from the runs, do the opposite of the trends, zig when they're zagging or zag when they're zigging. You might want to take two just so you're not stuck with Daniel Jones if everything goes wrong, right? If your quarterback position goes tits up, you draft a big fat bust. You don't want to have to be rolling out Daniel Jones, or maybe they bench Daniel Jones and you got to roll out the Italian stallion Tommy DeVito or horsecock Drew Lock. So adding a second quarterback in deeper leagues is something I am much more likely to do than in a normal 10, 12, 8-team league. I definitely think in 8 or 10-team leagues, it is basically useless to do so unless you are in that range where the quarterback position is a little bit more suspect. Moving now to the tight end position, I have done a lot of research on the tight end, just like the quarterbacks, the running backs, and wide receivers, and I have listened to some content, and I have heard some people say that they believe tight end is incredibly deep, much deeper than normal, and I've also heard others say that the tight end position is incredibly shallow. Don't dive, you're going to crack your skull open and end up like Antonio Brown with CTE. I am personally in the middle of that spectrum, like my name was Malcolm. I think the top 9 tight ends, which are in the S through the B tier that you can see right next to me, they, to me, are the guys that feel very solid. I am very confident in them. Then the range of the C tier, Njoku, Brock Bowers, Pat Freiermuth, feel okay to me. They definitely have the upside, but they are not as safe as the guys ranked above them. I will personally say that I am much more likely to take the upper echelon tight end in tier 1 and 2 range compared to reaching up and taking an early round quarterback. Again, that doesn't mean that I'm full on fading early round quarterbacks. I love Hurts. I love Lamar Jackson. But what I'm saying is I am more likely to take the Pitts, the Kincaid, compared to the quarterbacks going in that range. The same ideology that we talked about in the quarterback situation here is utilized here. I am basically never taking 2 tight ends unless I fall into the range where everything has gone wrong, right? I miss out on those top 12 guys that I'm pretty, like the top 9 that I'm very confident in, and then the top 12 that I feel pretty okay about. Then you need to be taking multiple shots. You might even want to draft fucking 3 of them. I'm never going to do that, but maybe if you're a little less confident than me, you're going to want to draft 3. I'm taking 2 every single time, right? If I'm in the range where I got to get Kmet, I'm pairing Kmet with Aten. If I get Schultz, I'm packaging him with Musgrave, right? I want to be taking as much shots from deep as possible if I miss on those early tight ends. Because once you get past those top 12 guys, it is basically like closing your eyes and throwing a dart at a dartboard, right? It is going to be very hard to find one, but if you do, you could end up with a league winner like Sam Laporta last season. So now we're to pivot on into the running back position. If you guys want all of my player takes for the running backs that are on your screen right now, all of these guys are ranked inside of my top 40, except for J.K. Dobbins, who is my running back 41. You should go ahead and check out the top 40 running back rankings video that I made. Same will be the case with the wide receivers that we talk about after this. So there are 3 main running back strategies: hero running back, double hero running back, and 0 running back. In hero running back, you are going to draft 1 elite running back in one of the first 2 rounds. If you want to really stretch it, you can find one in the 3rd round due to how running backs are falling more this year to be your hero running back, right? They will be your hero. And then right after that, you are going hammer time, smashing the wide receiver position, and 1 or maybe 2 of those picks before you go with running back again could be both your quarterback and tight end, or maybe just your elite quarterback or just your elite tight end. And then you'll be able to hop, skip, and jump your way back to the running back position after you surpass the running back dead zone that we're going to be talking about in just a couple of minutes. Double hero running back, very similar to hero running back, except for instead of 1 hero running back, you're getting 2 of those motherfuckers. So 2 running backs in the first 2 or 3 rounds. This allows you to wait even longer at the running back position, as you have 2 running backs now that have top 5 upside. Lastly, we got 0 running back. This is a strategy that has gotten more and more popular as the years have gone on. Feels like now, though, it's getting a little bit too hyped up. People are getting down on their knees, giving the Gawk Gawk 9000 special, the Sukalamink to the 0 running back strategy, which is where you essentially punt the running back position, Pat McAfee style, for the first 7 or 8 rounds of your draft, and you build a super team of wide receivers with an elite quarterback and an elite tight end. And then after those first 7 or 8 rounds, you want to smash the running back position like it was your stepsister stuck in a washing machine. To simplify all of this, the more running backs you commit to early, the less running backs you want to be committing to inside of the middle rounds where you get to the running back dead zone. The running back dead zone are going inside of the middle rounds of drafts, and they have historically very low hit rates. Now, if you actually look at last season, we were hitting dead zone running backs out of the fucking park. Home run like half of the time. They were great. But normally, on average, the running back dead zone is where you're stepping on the landmine and half of your leg is blown off into another country, right? So the running backs that I would consider going in the dead zone are guys from picks 50 through 80. And they are on your screen right now. Guys like Aaron Jones. We're going in order based upon aggregate ADP from ESPN Sleeper, NFL, and RT Sports. Aaron Jones, James Conner, DeAndre Swift, David Montgomery, Ramondre Stevenson, Zamir White, Najee Harris, Raheem Mostert, and Tony Pollard. It is also important to understand that you don't just completely skip this range, right? There are going to be some guys in here that can, boom, shout out the Rizzler and the Costco guys, right? Have that huge season. But you need to understand that the range of running backs in this range, a majority of the time, they are going to be a swing and a miss. They are going to be a big, fat bust. Some of these guys, right, I like Zamir White. I like Raheem Mostert. I like David Montgomery. I like Aaron Jones. I like Ramondre Stevenson. But you are entering into the danger zone when you're selecting running backs in this range. Now we move to the final position that we'll be discussing before we break down the mock draft to show you guys how it actually look to utilize all of this that I've been speaking directly at you. If you've enjoyed so far, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button like it owes you money. Hit that like button down below as well. So wide receiver strategy, like I said with the running backs, if you want to hear my reasoning behind this list, right, you want to pause the video, look at the list. If you want to know my exact thoughts, the player takes behind all of these rankings, then you want to make sure you watch the top 40 wide receiver rankings video after this. And if you haven't seen the wide receiver and running backs video, I would watch both of them. They are great ways to prepare for your fantasy football draft. Now, with wide receivers, you are basically doing the same exercise you did with the running backs. If you are taking a boatload of wide receivers inside of the middle rounds of your draft, which is what I typically do, right? Sometimes you draft 2 running backs off the rip, or a running back, then a wide receiver. The middle range at wide receiver in the middle rounds feels like a sweet spot where you can just rip off a bunch of wide receivers with high upside, right? So if you're taking a bunch of wide receivers in that sweet spot range that I like, you want to calm down later and not just keep smashing the wide receiver button because they're so fun. You need to be taking shots at the high upside running backs late. If you avoid wide receiver, which I do not advise at all. If you're in a half PPR, full PPR league, you fucking need wide receivers. If you're in a league with 3 wide receivers or multiple flex spots, if you're going full on fucking 0 wide receiver, you are an idiot. You can't be doing that. Now, you can win your league anyway, so I guess I shouldn't call you an idiot. I'll backtrack on that statement. I'll back it up, throw that shit in reverse. But what I'll tell you is I definitely would not advise doing that in half PPR, full PPR leagues. But if you do that, if you're really committing to the running back position, then early on, then what you want to do is be taking those late round shots at wide receivers. The wide receivers this year are amazing. They are incredibly deep, which is what leads me to a majority of drafts doing hero running back or double hero running back, because while I love the Amon-Ra St. Brown, the CeeDee Lamb, right, and I'm taking them in a lot of drafts, if I can get that Bijan Robinson, that Breece Hall, and match them with some elite wide receivers as you get deeper and deeper into the drafts, it is a great strategy in my opinion. The wide receiver position is incredibly fun this year. And again, in that sweet spot zone, which is the middle rounds, right? The rounds where you start to see guys, maybe Drake London goes a little bit earlier than that, but the DJ Moores, the Godwins, the Evans, the Jalen Waddle, the Cooper Kupp, the Rashee Rice, that range of wide receiver. So incredibly fun to draft. There is so much upside in there, which leads me to take running backs early and potentially swing on the quarterback or tight end early so I could take a bunch of swings in that range. Now we are going to put it all together, wrap it all in a bow, and do a mock draft utilizing all of the talking points that I talked about. If you've enjoyed thus far, hit that subscribe button like it owes you money. Make sure you guys hit that like button as well. Let's head on in to the mock draft. Sorry about potentially flashbanging anyone with the screen going straight up white here, but we're going to be doing a mock draft here on Fantasy Pros, drafting up against ESPN, NFL, and Sleeper ADP. This is a 12-team mock draft from the 9th overall spot. We are going with the league settings that I believe a majority of you guys are in. 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, flex, kicker, defense, and 5 bench spots. Let's head on into things. So we talked about it in the draft strategy section part of the video. You want to enter into your draft without a crazy intricate plan. You don't want to enter into your draft thinking, I need a quarterback in the 2nd round. Then I need a tight end in the 3rd round. I need 3 running backs by the 5th round. I need this, that, and the other thing, because all that is going to do is cause you to reach, potentially miss on values because, oh, I need my 3rd running back in round 7. And then you reach and take some absolute schlub because the rest of your league mates are smashing running back. So make sure you go into the draft with a clear mind, right? This video is going to help you out a ton. You have a great idea on the rankings of the players. You have a great idea on my philosophy in drafting quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. And hopefully this mock draft really does tie things all together and helps you out a ton. So at the 9th overall pick here, we lose out on the top 8 guys, right? These are the guys that I feel incredibly confident in. Some people might be nervous about Justin Jefferson. I'm not super nervous about him, but all these other guys feel like wrapping a condom around your team. It feels super duper safe. But we're up at the 109 here, and we are going to go with a wide receiver, and that is going to be either Garrett Wilson or A.J. Brown. You could basically flip a coin between the two, and if you could find a 3-sided die, you can also probably include Puka Nacua in that. I do currently have Garrett Wilson ranked higher, but again, it is very close between all 3 of these guys. If you wanted to go running back, though, it would be Jonathan Taylor, Gibbs, and Barkley ranked in that order for me. I'm not going to do too many player takes in this mock draft because we're kind of just talking about the philosophy of building a team. But the reason why I love Garrett Wilson is because this guy has been bent over a table by the quarterback play his whole career. And now with better quarterback play in New York with the Jets, with Aaron Rodgers, even if he's not all the way back to his old self, I think that Garrett Wilson is going to have a phenomenal year. So we're back up on the clock yet again here. Looking at running backs like Travis Etienne, Kyron Williams, Isaiah Pacheco, Devon Achane, Derrick Henry, Rashad White, Alvin Kamara, and James Cook. Now, if we don't take a running back here, based upon doing all these mock drafts, doing best ball drafts over on Underdog Fantasy, I know for sure I am going to potentially get rinsed at the running back position if I don't take one here. So while there's risk in guys like Devontae Adams with shitty quarterback play, there's risk in Drake London because Drake London hasn't really done anything in his career. I like Drake London, but some people might not. Chris Olave, huge question marks with Derek Carr. Jalen Waddle, do you want to take him at the 204? Probably not. So to me, it's very easy to go running back in this range, which is why we went with a wide receiver in the 1st round. It would be even easier to smash running back here if we saw Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, or Gibbs fall to pick 16. But we're going to go with Kyron Williams. I get that he is an injury concern, but when this guy's on the field, he is a legitimate threat to be the running back number 1 any given game and could finish as the running back one on the season. This Rams system with Sean McVay is incredibly legit. So we're back up on the clock here. Looking at running backs, Rachaad White, Alvin Kamara, and James Cook fall back to us. At wide receiver, Cooper Kupp and Nico Collins. Now, I would be fine drafting 2 guys on the LA Rams. So if you wanted Cooper Kupp, you can happily draft him in this range. At quarterback, Jalen Hurts, and all of the tight ends not named Sam Laporta or Travis Kelce are still available. Josh Allen and Pat Mahomes are gone at the quarterback position. Based upon what I know about tight ends, in the 3rd round, you definitely don't need to take either Trey McBride or Mark Andrews. It is very likely that they fall back to you, and they could even potentially fall back to you in the 5th round. But if you really want one of them, I would urge you to take them in the 4th round. So looking at the running back range here, to me, after this range of guys, the Rachaad White, Alvin Kamara, James Cook, Joe Mixon, there is definitely a fall off. Whereas in wide receiver, you start to enter that sweet spot, right, where I am ecstatic about a lot of these guys. Now, there are some players that I am avoiding, but as a whole, I love a lot of the wide receivers in this range. Now, a lot of people have Rachaad White ranked ahead of James Cook, but I personally love James Cook this season. But something you want to do in your actual draft is look at the draft board. See how this team doesn't have a single running back, so they're very likely to take 1 or 2. This team has 2 running backs, so more than likely they're not going to take any. This team has 1, so they're probably going to take another one. So if we want to get our running back here, we probably have to take them in this round. Now, that is an educated guess. Your educated guesses aren't always going to be correct, but I'm going to make an educated guess here. Hey, the running back is going to be gone by the time I get to pick again, so I am going to take my guy James Cook here. Now, to some, maybe that's a reach. I fully understand that, but I do not believe that he will be back available for me inside of the next round, so I'm going to select James Cook here, who has been a guy that has been thrown to the side by fantasy football players because he can't score touchdowns. I think the touchdowns are coming his way this season. A lot more usage at the end of last season when they fired their offensive coordinator, who's now their offensive coordinator for the season. After James Cook, Rachaad White, Nico Collins, Joe Mixon, Jalen Hurts, Stephon Diggs, and Cooper Kupp. So we are not able to get Cooper Kupp here, but we are able to get one of my favorite wide receivers in fantasy football this year, and that is Wiki DJ Moore of the Chicago Bears. If you prefer Debo, Devontae Smith, DK Metcalf, Malik Neighbors, you could have went with one of them as well. If you wanted Lamar, I'd be fine taking him in the 4th round. I would also be fine taking Trey McBride here. But even if I miss on Trey McBride, I feel pretty confident that in the 5th round, I should be able to get Dalton Kincaid, Mark Andrews, probably not Mark Andrews, but Dalton Kincaid, Kyle Pitts, one of those guys, and Richardson, Kyler Murray should fall back to us in the 5th, 6th round range. So we're going to go ahead and get a wide receiver that I think has top 10 upside, a guy who finished inside the top 12 last year with worse quarterback play than he has this season. Now I get, obviously, the addition of the other wide receivers there, Rome Odunze, Keenan Allen, does hurt for DJ Moore, but ultimately I think he's the clear alpha on this team. So outside the running back and wide receiver position, Lamar, Stroud, Andrews, McBride, and Kincaid all come off the board. So if we are looking at tight end, Kyle Pitts would be the pick, but I don't think we're going to have to take him in the 5th round. Now, none of the teams behind us have a tight end yet, but I'm fine gambling on that. One of the teams has a quarterback. I'm a huge fan of Anthony Richardson, but if I don't get Richardson and maybe I don't want one of the tight ends, I would be fine getting Kyler Murray in the next round. In my home league draft, I actually drafted Kyler Murray yesterday and stacked him up with Marvin Harrison Jr. Now, something we didn't talk about in the strategy video at the beginning, the strategy section, is the idea of stacking. I'm not going to sit here and just suck off the stacking method, right? Fondle the nuts of the stacking method, but I do think stacking is useful, but you don't necessarily need it like you do in best ball. So we're up here, and I get that Rashee Rice's ADP is not technically in the 5th round, right? You can find him later. His ADP is pick 77, but if you are in a league with a bunch of people that have enough brain cells to rub together, Rashee Rice is going to go in the 5th or the 6th round with no suspension looming. Rashee Rice is a potential top 12 wide receiver on the best offense in the National Football League. So after George Kittle, Tank Dell, Calvin Ridley, George Pickens, Kyle Pitts, Anthony Richardson. So we got iced out of the tight end position. Now we're in the Evan Ingram range. If you like Evan Ingram, you can go ahead and draft him. My problem with Evan Ingram, again, we're not trying to get too deep into player takes, is while I think the guy's incredibly talented, why he might get an insane amount of targets, the touchdowns have never been there. The most amount of touchdowns he scored was back in 2017 when I was still in high school. Back-to-back seasons in Jacksonville with 4. Probably going to score 4 yet again. 4 scores. Shout out Abe Lincoln. So we're back up here. Not going to go tight end. I think Kyler Murray is acceptable at pick 71. It might be considered a reach. People have Joe Shiesty ranked ahead of him. If you paid attention during the quarterback part and you were looking at the screen, that was over here, kind of where I'm sitting, you would have seen that I have Kyler ranked above Joe Burrow. I love the rushing upside this season. I love the fact that Kyler Murray has the upside any given week to run in multiple touchdowns, which could be a great way to compact my fantasy football score. Rushing quarterbacks aren't a must, right? I love Jordan Love. I love Dak Prescott. I like Joe Shiesty as well. But Kyler Murray is one of my favorite quarterbacks in the 6th, 7th round range, and a guy that is going to be on a lot of my fantasy football teams, just like he's on a lot of my underdog best ball fantasy football teams. If you don't know what underdog is, they are the sponsor of today's video. Underdog Fantasy is the best place to play best ball in the whole entire universe. If you don't know what best ball fantasy football is, it's the best part about fantasy football. It's the draft, and that's it. There's no waivers, no trades, no in-season management. At the end of every single week, Underdog automatically puts the highest scores into your lineup for you. Underdog Fantasy's main contest, $25 to enter Best Ball Mania 5, $1.5 million to first place. They also have other contests on there. If you're new to Underdog Fantasy and use promo code Notorious or click on the link in the video description or in the pinned comment, you will receive up to $1,000 in bonus cash, plus a free special pick for week 1, which is higher than half of a passing yard for Lamar Jackson. So make sure you guys check that out. If you are a first-time depositor, it is a whole bunch of fun. So we're back up on the clock here. Our roster so far is Kyler Murray, Kyren Williams, James Cook, Garrett Wilson, DJ Moore, and Rashee Rice. So looking at the tight end pool here, Evan Ingram is gone. Jake Ferguson is the next best tight end. And like I said, after Jake Ferguson, while I'm fine with the Njoku, the Brock Bowers, the Freiermuth, it doesn't feel as great as Jake Ferguson. The Dallas Cowboys might be one of the best offenses in the National Football League. Jake Ferguson has a lot of touchdown upside. Now, I know a lot of people argue he didn't have that many big games last season, but in the playoffs, when the Dallas Cowboys got spit roasted by the Packers, Jake Ferguson had a huge game. There's a guy with 20-plus point upside in any given game, and I think he's going to look even better than he looked last season. And last year was really the first year where he was actually used. His first season in 2022, he played in 16 games, but he only had 22 targets where he had over 100 last season. So we filled out our whole entire roster. Now, what I will tell you is you don't need to go into your draft thinking, oh, I got to fill out my whole entire roster before I start drafting bench spots. It's perfectly fine to do that as well, but that's just how this draft played out. And in leagues like this, where it is a lot more vanilla, it's the missionary style, staring into her eyes while you're drilling her type deal here, you kind of are more likely to do this. Whereas if you're in a 3 wide receiver league with 2 flexes, you might even take another bench wide receiver before you take your second running back or your tight end or your quarterback. It just kind of depends on league size. People are going to start taking defenses now, and you don't want to be doing that. You want to be drafting a defense based upon their opponent for week number 1. We have a whole entire video about that on the channel, but to give you a long video in short, the reason why you draft a defense for their opponent week number 1 is because you're looking to get that edge in week 1. While the 49ers might be the best defense in the NFL, they might not be the best defense in week 1, and you can explore edges by just picking up the best defense in every single week off the waiver wire, and I make defense to stream videos every single week. So we're back up on the clock here. I believe heavily in my running back, so I'm going to keep taking shots at the wide receiver position like we talked about off the rip of the video. We're talking quarterback and tight end strategy. We got Kyler, we got Ferguson, so we're not drafting any more quarterbacks or tight ends. So it's all wide receiver and running back from here on out until we have to take our kicker and our defense. So we're going to go ahead here and take JSN, a very high upside wide receiver of the Seattle Seahawks. They still have Geno Smith, sure, which isn't the most ideal, but they bring in a new head coach, new offensive coordinator, and a lot of the talk has been getting JSN a lot more involved because last season, based upon where they drafted JSN and all the hype that he got, the drumbeat that he got, he was a straight up dud, but not really because he sucks at the NFL level. The guy can't play, doesn't have hands or fucking something like that, but because he just wasn't given enough work. And we saw when he was given enough work, he was very talented. So looking at the running back position here, we do want to scoop up one of these guys here, Chase Brown, Jerome Ford, or Ezekiel Elliott. I have been banging the drum heavily for Jerome Ford, but I do think Chase Brown has a little bit more upside because once Nick Chubb does return, there's still a chance, hey, he comes back and he's not that guy, pal, and they're not giving as many touches as you would like, but there's also a chance that he does come back and does look like his old self because the dude's built like fucking Wolverine. So we're going to go Chase Brown here. I like Zach Moss better 100%, but I think Chase Brown could edge him out, pause, and become the lead back on the team. So after that, we see a bunch more running backs come off the board as well as some wide receivers. And we are going to go ahead and go wide receiver here because, again, we are very confident in Kyren Williams and James Cook. If you wanted to handcuff Kyren Williams, you could have done that last round, but Blake Corum is already gone. So we're going to go wide receiver here, hunt for rookies, young players. Notice our bench is very young so far. We got JSN, Chase Brown, and now we're going to take Brian Thomas Jr. You don't need all these young bucks on your bench, but we're looking for upside. These are the guys with the most upside. Rookies are the guys that typically it takes some time. You can have them chilling on your bench, and then they come out like Thor's fucking hammer and backhands defenses. So Brian Thomas Jr., so much hype in training camp, so much hype in preseason, talking about he's getting better and better every single week. I believe heavily in that, and I believe in his talent out of LSU. So we're back up on the clock here. Going to take our layup pick with Rico Dowdle. Zeke, probably going to be the guy week one. Zeke might be the guy for the first couple of games, but Rico Dowdle runs circles around old man Ezekiel Elliott at this point. So we got 2 running backs in our starting roster, obviously. Our flex is wide receiver. So we have 4 running backs on this team. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wide receivers. Since this isn't a 3 wide receiver, 1 flex, or 2 wide receivers, 2 flexes, we are going to go ahead and close out with another running back for a balanced 5 running backs, 5 wide receivers on the team. That would change based upon, hey, if we went 0 running back, we want a lot more running backs, right? We want way more than 5 if our running back 1 is Tony Pollard, right? But in a double running back build, you can even be confident sitting here at 4 and drafting another wide receiver. But with this pick, I would rather just take that late round shot at a running back that could have some crazy league winning upside. So here, we're actually going to go with Antonio Gibson. I've seen a lot of things more recently talking up Gibson. I'm not going to give my stamp of approval telling you guys that I love Antonio Gibson. But in preseason, last night, it was pretty promising what we saw out of Antonio Gibson. Again, I don't think he's really all that in the kit caboodle, right? He's not some amazing player, and the Patriots aren't some amazing team, but if something was to happen to Stevenson, there is a clear path to a shit ton of touches in New England. So now we're going to take our kicker first here. We're going to take Ka'imi Fairbairn, the highest ranked kicker. And then for the defense, again, you are taking a defense going up against a not so hot opponent in week number 1. The Seattle Seahawks are one of my main targets. They have 2 great matchups off the rip of the season. I am targeting them because of that. They play up against the Patriots, and then they play up against the Carolina Panthers. So the Seattle Seahawks are my number 1 defense to pick, not because I think they're the best defense in the NFL, they're far from it, but because the matchups are incredibly juicy like Sydney Sweeney's ass. So thank you guys so much for watching today's video. We got a C-, but if you listen to what Fantasy Pros draft grades tell you, or what the Yahoo, the ESPN, whatever league you're in, CBS, if you listen to whatever those guys tell you, it's a whole bunch of bullshit. All that matters is that you got the team that you liked. Again, you want to know why we probably got a low grade? Because we reached slightly on James Cook, and we took Jake Ferguson around ahead of ADP. It really doesn't matter because we got the correct construction here. I don't think you guys should be doing some insane reach arounds, but I don't really think I reached all that much. So our team, Kyler Murray, Kyren Williams, James Cook, Garrett Wilson, Wiki, DJ Moore, Jake Ferguson, Rashee Rice, Seattle Seahawks defense, Ka'imi Fairbairn, JSN, Chase Brown, Brian Thomas Jr., Rico Dowdle, and Antonio Gibson. If I was going into my fantasy football season with this team, I would be absolutely erect. So thank you guys all so much for watching. Check out one of the videos on your screen if you haven't seen them already. Let me know down below in the comment section how you like this team and what your ideal strategy is. Again, don't go into your draft thinking, oh, I need to do hero running back, double hero running back, zero running back. Let me know what your favorite strategy is. Again, check out one of the videos on your screen if you haven't seen them already. Check out Underdog Fantasy. Check out the Patreon as well. Love you guys. Have a great one. As always, good boy.